Traders, how are you? Marcello, founder of the Day Trading Academy, co-founder of Speed Up Trader. New president, new year, new pandemic. Doing the recap of the markets last week. So Monday, we had the holiday. Happy MLK. He did a lot of things for the nation, so thanks to him as well. Hope you enjoyed the holiday. Tuesday, market was higher. We did have Treasury Secretary nominee Janet Yellen, advocate for huge fiscal relief. And one of the things I'm never going to get political, right? Because I think after the last 4 years and even the last year, 2020, I don't think anybody wants to hear anything when it comes to political stuff. But I want you to keep in mind that what's happening with the fiscal situation in the United States and the debt really has not been different between both sides. Obama, in 8 years, added more debt to the United States federal debt than any other president combined in the history of the United States. And then Trump, because Obama's left, Trump is right. You hate him, you love him, doesn't matter. Trump in 4 years, obviously it accelerated because of the pandemic, but in 4 years, he is known as the king in debt, added almost as much debt as Obama. And now we're already talking about another $2 trillion in fiscal relief. So things are not going to end well. We're already at 100. I have the exact number here. We're already at 100.1% of GDP. And as it's projected to climb even higher, we're going to be in situations like France, Greece, Italy, and Japan. Hopefully it doesn't end up as Greece and Italy because they're not doing well. Wednesday, the market was higher. Officially, Biden has been inaugurated as the new president in the United States. All three major indices in the United States have reached record highs during the day, and then they closed higher as well. Obviously, the situation was everybody's hoping for the new stimulus. If there is new stimulus, even though it's bad for us in the long term, in the short term, stocks are going to go up. Stocks are going to go up. They're going to go through the roof. Thursday, mixed prospects of added government stimulus remaining a key driver in the markets. And then Friday, we ended mixed as we're now hoping for a full economic reopening in the coming months. Other than that, the Dow went up 0.59%, the S&P 500 went up 1.94%, and the Nasdaq went up 4.18%. European markets are mixed as well, with Spain being the biggest loser at 2.41%. Latin America and Canada, I don't know if you guys care about Latin America that much, so I'll just give you Canada, negative 0.77%. If you do care about Latin America, let me know, and I'll give you the top one. And then in Africa and the Middle East, Egypt, the biggest winner at 1.75%, while the far East and Asia and Australia, Hong Kong was the biggest winner at 3.05%, with the Philippines at a negative 2.73%. Huge news in Bitcoin. We had a ton of volatility this week. We had the same situation that happened during the crash in December, where it doesn't matter what stock or forex pair or binary option fraud we're talking about. Any any financial asset that starts to go parabolic will crash. And the reason why is because at the end of the day, the market needs to be in parity, let's say, right? People need to buy, people need to sell. If it goes parabolic or it crashes, that's a situation where there's euphoria or fear, for example, on the other side. So if you have euphoria with the market going up, eventually it's going to crash because that's not a normal market behavior. Everybody can't be buying all the time, essentially, right? And that's the same thing that happened recently. I don't know if I mentioned it. I think I mentioned it only in the Spanish video, not the English one, but we had the same situation where the market started going parabolic again, and then it crashed below 30,000. Now we ended the week at 33,148.40 and went down 12.79% for the week. It obviously went up a little bit higher since I pulled the numbers. BlackRock, which is the world's largest fund manager, decided that they're going to have two funds open where they're going to start investing not in Bitcoin, but Bitcoin futures. They manage $8.7 trillion. And Ethereum also hit an all-time high, went to $1,439.33, as obviously the news of the $1.9 trillion new stimulus collapsed the dollar on Wednesday, went down by 10%. So that's part of the reason why a lot of people are jumping into Bitcoin, because they feel that, we're going to have, it's not a matter of if, but when we're going to have the collapse of the dollar. I would put it, if they keep spending money like this, it's going to be sooner than later. But if I had to ballpark, it's probably going to be between about 3 to 7 years or so. Gave you the numbers for this week. Bitcoin is still up over 260% over the last 12 months, and it peaked 19,783 in December of 2017. That was the last peak before the recent one. Commodities, U.S. crude went down 0.55% to 52.07. International Brent went up 0.18% to 55.20. Biden has rescinded the order to build the Keystone Pipeline, which is called the Keystone XL Pipeline, at $8 billion. It did restart work during the Trump administration, but this is the first economic hit for the new administration. There's going to be 11,000 jobs lost for Americans, another 8,000 union positions, according to the company that was building the pipeline, and also thousands of Canadian jobs as well. And other than that, the relationship, obviously, with Trudeau is already on, what's the word in English? It's was strained because obviously, Trump's policies were more protectionistic towards the U.S. Other than that, precious metals for the week are higher. Gold went up 1.48%, while silver went up 2.61%. And one other thing I want to mention with the pipeline, it's not a matter of not building the pipeline to help the environment. Because if you look this up, don't use Google because they censor the information. Use DuckDuckGo. The oil is still going to be moved. It's just going to go on the rail lines. Who owns the rail lines? Warren Buffett. Who gives money to the Democrats? Warren Buffett. So whether it's the right or the left, I don't want to just point out the left because of that, but it's just corruption at its finest. That's why I always say it's not the left or the right. They want us to point the finger at each other and fight so they can go and do their thing while we're distracted. Same thing in Rome, for example, right? There's a saying for that. But just keep in mind, it's not going to stop the oil from moving. It's just going to go through the rail lines instead of the pipeline. So don't think this is for the environment. Just, I always tell you guys, always pay attention to what people do. Don't pay attention to what they say. So they'll say they're stopping it for the environment. I'm all about helping the environment. Obviously the United States could do a lot better in that department, but just keep in mind. Financial and banking news, concerns of the U.S. debt mountain. As I mentioned to you before, we reached 100.1% of GDP. The pandemic also has caused a huge gap between the ultra wealthy and the rest of Americans. Just 655 people control $4 trillion in wealth. Only 39% of Americans are able to cover an unexpected $1,000 expense, meaning that 61% of Americans, about 200 million people, can't afford to have emergency spending. I've been telling you guys forever, learn how to trade. Then the pandemic hits you in the face and you didn't pay attention. Chinese yuan is also going to be the first major global currency to become digitized and backed by gold. It's going to be called the Chinese petro cryptocurrency, and countries that have already started using the Chinese petro cryptocurrency are Angola, Brazil, Iran, Russia, Saudi Arabia, Venezuela, and United Arab Emirates, where Dubai is at. And this is what I told you guys before. I've always said that Bitcoin's going to go up and down. It could continue to make record highs, but it's not going to be the new financial system, right? What I always talk to you guys about is government coin. And then we have a problem because they can just see everything that we do. China began digitizing the currency in 2014 and intends to implement it worldwide before the 2022 Beijing Winter Olympics. They're saying that it's going to allow for closer scrutiny of riskier investments by tracing cash flow, in addition to help ensuring repayment of debt and enforcing financial obligations and regulations. But the only problem is they're going to know everything. They're going to know what we spend our money on, and obviously they can control it too because it's all digital. Isn't that awesome? Don't you want the government to know everything that you do? Isn't that great? Other than that, The United States dollar the Canadian dollar hit a record high, not a record high, a 3-year high against the U.S. dollar after obviously we had this situation with not only the pipeline but the stimulus. And U.S. tax filing season is going to open on the 12th of February this year, 2 weeks later than normal, to be able to run the situation with the December stimulus in addition to the second round stimulus, but it's still going to be due before April 15th. In political news, Biden is inheriting the stock market at all-time highs, but also a huge federal budget deficit, in addition to enormous national debt, now exceeding the GDP. Ongoing weakening dollar, elevated economic uncertainty, and in addition to that, the Federal Reserve is also losing power about what they can do to help the economy, because supposedly the central bank should help whenever there's a recession, right? Because the government should control everything. In economic news, the hit by the pandemic, all major economies in 2020 contracted, but there's bright news. China actually grew 2.3%, which was the slowest growth that they've had for the last 40 years. It's now expected that China is going to overtake the United States as the largest economy in the world in 2028. Previously expected to be the 1930s, and obviously the difference in the reactions of the pandemic, how the U.S. obviously is continuing to have shutdowns in certain states, while China pretty much has opened up everything. And so now it's expected to be a lot sooner rather than later. Americans filing for new applications for unemployment benefits decreased last week by about $26,000, raising the risk of a second straight month of job losses. And the manufacturing activity in the U.S. accounts for almost 12% of United States economic activity. That surged to a level not seen since 14 years ago. In early January, it spiked. Other than that, GM spiked on the news Tuesday and Wednesday that a big company that they invested in called Cruise, which is a self-driving car maker, is going to now partner with Microsoft to be able to accelerate the comercialización, I learned how to say that just now in Spanish, of self-driving vehicles. And also Netflix was soared on Wednesday after they reported that they had 200 million subscribers and they're no longer going to need debt financing for day-to-day operations, which is a change in their business model, because before they needed debt to be able to function, which they're not going to need anymore. In trade news, West Africa tried to create an OPEC-style cornering of the market when it comes to cacao, more than anything Ivory Coast and Ghana. But now there's a situation where people, like Nestle, for example, if you don't know, cacao, it's grown on a plant, if you didn't know, right? It's like a seed. Think of it like an apple, but brown. And so they get the cacao to make the chocolate, and now a lot of the chocolate companies decided not to buy any of the cacao, and now a lot of farmers in these countries are not doing very well. Which is horrible, but I just think, I don't understand why everybody thinks that they have to control everything, right? It's like, just let the market be. Other than that, Biden's cabinet picks signal a new administration is going to follow some of the Trump's tougher economic policies towards China, with a lot of officials vowing to fight abusive trade practices and barring products from the nation's oppressed ethnic Uyghur Muslim minority. Hopefully I said that right. Geely, which is the largest private automaker in China, is partnering with the Facebook of China called Tencent to be able to go ahead and develop features for a smart car. And Bill Gates has now become the largest farmland owner in the United States. 19 states, 242,000 acres, with an additional 27,000 of non-farmland. He recently paid for $171 million He paid $171 million for an additional 14,500 acres in Washington state. And if you see the news about the Great Reset, even Bill Gates has talked about nobody should own property by 2030. We should all be shared, but it's okay if he owns it, right? That's all right. Tuesday, extended partial lockdown until the middle of February in Germany. That's been extended as well. Remember that Germany is the fourth largest economy in the world. In addition to that, it's the largest economy in Europe. U.S. home building and permits surged in December. Obviously, we have a situation where we've had a record low mortgage rate, so get your refinance on. Housing starts, building for new houses went up 5% on an annual rate and also went up 5.2% on a year-over-year basis. It's up 7% from 2019. And this I thought was really impressive. Volkswagen, the world's largest automaker, lost $1.7 billion in the first half of 2020, but they recovered, and they now have made $12 billion in 2020. So they were losing $1.7 billion in the first 12 months of 2020, and they flipped it, and they actually made $12 billion, which means they would have made $13.7 billion in the last half of the year. I think that's incredible. Ford is also recalling 3 million U.S. and Canada vehicles from a faulty manufacturing airbag from Takata, which is now bankrupt. So if you have one of those vehicles, make sure to look out for that. And in international events, a huge 6.4 earthquake hit Argentina. It was felt as far as 186 miles away in Chile. No damage in Chile, but we recently had as well a situation where we had a 7.1 in Antarctica as well. I don't know if you guys have been noticing, but we're starting to get a lot more earthquakes and even volcanoes. And if you guys have listened to me for a while, especially on the DTA channel that got banned for whatever reason, thanks YouTube, we're going to have a lot of problems the next 10 years. And not just, economic problems. I'm talking about social problems. I'm talking about environmental problems as well. So I don't think it's in regards to climate change. I think it's other factors. For example, I don't know if you guys want me to do a video on this, but the North Pole, the magnetic North Pole, is actually moving, and it's moving at such a fast rate that the military has had to optimize everything. Remember that GPS, Google Maps, literally works with GPS satellites, global positioning systems. So the military has even had to recalibrate earlier the GPS systems because the magnetic field of the Earth is actually changing, and the actual magnetic North Pole is literally taking a shot all the way to Siberia, to Russia. So those are the kinds of things I think that are affecting the kind of the extreme weathers that we are starting to see, and that we're going to start seeing in the future as well. 400,000 deaths from COVID-19 in the United States. It's the largest death toll in the world. Number 2 is Brazil, unfortunately, at 210,000, while India and Mexico at about 150,000 each. Globally, the virus has claimed 2 million people, and the mortality rate remains less than 2% of the infection rate, which stands at about 24 million cases. In addition to that, a top U.S. intelligence officer warned that North Korea is only seeking diplomacy to be able to advance its nuclear weapons development. So as I told you guys before, we kind of calmed down a little bit over the last few years, but this problem isn't going to go away anytime soon. And in the unusual facts this week, the website of the Iran Supreme Leader carrying an image of a golfer resembling Donald Trump, which is also in the picture being targeted by a drone as a threat of revenge for killing the Iranian general Qasem Soleimani in a U.S. drone attack. That's the news for this week, guys. Let me know if you guys have any questions. Don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see you next week.